I started at Halcyon Systems as number 6 on a team with too many ideas and too few processes. Back then, projects moved on caffeine and good intentions. Features shipped because someone stayed late and patched the hole. Customers forgave mistakes because the product still felt like a miracle. Years later, the miracle ran on other people's schedules. I had become the scaffolding. Quiet. Practical. Uncharismatic in the way engineers are. We like things that work, not things that look impressive on PowerPoint slides. I led the integration team, then the platform group, and by the time I was 40, I'd stitched together the company's core architecture. I knew which services would fail if a vendor hiccuped. I knew where to reroute traffic when an outage looked like it might cascade. I had documentation no one read until it was needed, and playbooks only a crisis would make valuable. People thanked me. They thanked me in Slack. They thanked me in email. They didn't thank me in public speeches at town halls. But executives noticed results, quiet ones. The board noticed retention metrics, the revenue growth that came not from flashy launches but from near zero downtime. Results hum in the background like the low note of a cello. You feel them, you don't always name them. Then the promotion happened. Halcyon had been through cycles. We'd been bought once, spun free, and put back together. We were a mid-sized company with big ambitions, IPO whispering through corridors. Leadership liked optics, leadership teams that photographed well, headlines that sounded impressive, and succession plans that made investors sleep an ounce easier. So when people started gossiping about the CEO's son potentially coming into the company, it was a whisper at first. I hadn't met him, why would I? He lived in New York, went to an Ivy, and his life had the sort of curated gloss people with family money get. I heard the rumor as one hears the weather forecast, maybe relevant, maybe not. Then the memo arrived. Internal memo, starting next quarter, Liam Hart will join as VP of Product Strategy. Effective immediately, internal candidates are advised to redirect reporting lines for strategic alignment. Liam. The CEO's son. A man with a 2-line bio attached to a LinkedIn page but no track record at our codebase. My desk felt like a staged trapdoor opening. I read the memo 3 times, thinking the next sentence would explain, of course, the board insisted, or interim, or will prove performance in a 90-day trial. Nothing. People stopped by my desk with awkward smiles. Big changes, they muttered. My boss, Vivek, who'd promoted me years before, tried not to look like he was choosing sides. The HR channel buzzed with euphemisms. Restructuring. Strategic realignment. Leadership transition. I was offered the language of consolation. We value you. This isn't about your performance. The phrasing felt like someone setting a bandage on a fracture. I believed them in private because my work was visible in the most inconvenient places. Incident tickets at 3 a.m., emergency patches at 2 a.m., comm status updates that stopped VC calls from turning into crises. But belief is a fragile thing when a company publishes a telegram under the logo of change. 2 weeks later, they held an off-site. Typical. You imagine trust falls and pastries, but off-sites are important rituals, group therapy for corporate anxiety. We were fed slides about vision and synergy. Slides with pictures of a future that smelled like PR. At the head of the table, our CEO, Martin Hart, smiled proudly and introduced his son, Liam, as if he were presenting an art piece. This is Liam, he said, looking at the assembled room with a half-paternal, half-boardroom glow that made my stomach drop. He spent the last few years in advisory roles, learning the industry. We're lucky he's joined us to accelerate product vision. Liam was polished, an easy laugh, a practiced hand gesture, the kind of charisma built on etiquette and expensive internships. He spoke about synergy and leveraging platform strengths, with verbs that made corporate HR swoon. He didn't mention outages. He didn't know a service name. He smiled like an executive and, in that room, that was enough for some people. Afterwards, people clapped. People wanted to be on the new page. Liam got coffee invites, Slack introductions, a whiteboard with his name on it in the innovation area. When someone asked point blank about the engineering team's anxieties, Martin assured us, there will be room for experienced operators. We're aligning strategy. The memo's edges softened when voiced by a father. I went home that night and opened a document I'd been keeping for years, a list of incidents, the root causes, and the one-liners that could have been PR nightmares but had been quietly diffused. I'd kept it as a professional scrapbook, but now it felt like an evidence file. It glinted in the lamplight like a ledger. I scheduled a meeting with Vivek. He sat across from me, the office window reflecting the city lights into his eyes. "You're the obvious successor for product ops," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of the syllables. He swallowed. "You know how the board works. They want a face they can present to investors. There's a charisma factor. This is optics." Optics. I'd become the person who fixed things no one loved to talk about. I'd become the scaffolding, invisible until the concrete cracked. "Is there any pathway," I asked, "where my work is recognized? A clear career plan?" He rubbed his forehead. "There may be a lead role. We can pivot your responsibilities. But Liam brings a network we can't ignore." "You mean the network he was born into?" I said. He winced. "Don't make this harder. Work with me on the transition. We'll make space." Transition. The word felt like polite erasure. A few weeks later, our team leader announced the change formally. Liam would be VP of Product Strategy, and my portfolio would be folded under a new headcount that reported into him. I would be the one making operations hum while he gave speeches and took meetings with investors. People said it would be fine. People smiled. They asked me if I wanted a promotion somewhere else. They offered HR workshops about upward mobility. The company was kind in the way companies are kind. It offered options that sounded like opportunities but were really navigational adjustments. Late one evening, after the lights on the 6th floor had dimmed, I sat alone in the on-call room. My laptop hummed. I pulled up the incident dashboard, a graph showing mean time to repair over 5 years. My team had brought it down from hours to minutes. Our uptime had become a selling point. I realized something complicated and cold. If I stayed, I'd keep fixing things, keep doing the vital work that ensures the company's value. If I left, the company would be forced to confront fragility in real time, and I had no appetite for being a silent martyr. The decision formed like a rock underwater, silently, then suddenly. I wrote my resignation that night. Not a letter of anger. Not a manifesto. A clear, precise note. To the board and Martin Hart. I hereby resign from my position as head of platform engineering, effective in 2 weeks. I will ensure a smooth handover and provide documentation for all active playbooks. Thank you for the opportunities. Daniel Ortiz. I typed the words without flourish. The act felt oddly gentle, like closing a book once you understand the story's end. When I gave the resignation to HR and Martin, cheeks neutral, eyes patient, people looked at me the way people look at someone making a funeral speech for a role. "We're sorry to lose you," they said. "We value your contributions." This is surprising. Surprising to them, perhaps. Necessary for me. The weeks that followed were procedural, handover meetings, documentation transfers, a mass of small acts that keep a company alive. I filed ticket notes, wrote playbooks, sat in calls, and walked people through incident exercises. I trained the people who would need to do my old job. Privately, I felt an odd clarity. The company was built on lots of small truths that no investor slide could capture. I had spent years turning panics into predictable outcomes. I would not leave chaos with a flourish. I would leave with the dignity of a craftsman finishing a piece. And then, a week before my last day, a major client called. A billing integration failed. An outage hit 1,000 customers. My phone buzzed at 3:03 a.m. I sat up in bed, coffee in hand, and answered. The root cause was a vendor callback loop that, with the right throttling, could have been contained. I logged in, traced the cascade, and sent a patch script to the on-call team. The problem was contained within the hour. Still, somewhere in a boardroom after I'd sent the script, someone said, "Thank God Daniel is still here." That phrase, gratitude framed as a gasp of relief, landed in the air like an admission. They needed me. They had not known how much. But need is a fragile tether. It is not the same as respect. And the board's gratitude was inadequate repair for years of invisible labor. When I left 2 weeks later, I took my notes, my playbooks, and the satisfaction of a job well documented. I also took a particular kind of quiet that no title could buy, the freedom to see what happens when you remove the scaffolding people have ignored for years. Because sometimes, the truest test of value isn't in praise. It's in absence. And often, absence screams the truth more loudly than dozens of polite memos ever could. When a system depends on one person, you don't notice it, until he's gone. My last day slipped by quietly. No farewell speech. No engraved pen. Just a few awkward pats on the back, a catered lunch HR ordered from a place too expensive for what it served, and a card with generic signatures from people who'd never read a single engineering postmortem I wrote. Liam didn't show up to the goodbye gathering. He sent me a Slack message instead. "Appreciate everything, man. Big shoes to fill, huh? Stay in touch. Big shoes to fill." He typed it like a joke, like a meme. He didn't know the truth of those words. Not yet. My departure was processed with cheerful corporate politeness. I handed in my badge. The door clicked behind me. For the first time in years, Halcyon Systems no longer owned my nights, my mind, or my blood pressure. I went home. Slept deeply. And within 3 days, the first crack appeared. Sparkle's incident number 1, the weekend rollout. Halcyon's new leadership team, under Liam's strategic direction, decided to approve a major back-end upgrade. Something I had told them, explicitly, needed at least 3 more weeks of testing. They ignored the caution. New leadership, new tone, new confidence. Friday night they pushed the update live. Saturday morning the pager exploded. Not mine, not anymore. But my former team members started messaging me from their personal phones. "Miguel, bro, please tell me you documented the billing fallback logic." "Sarah, the new release is throttling requests like crazy. We can't find the toggles you used." "Tasha, customers are screaming. This isn't stable. Why didn't anyone check the load balancer dependencies?" I did document everything. I documented it meticulously. But they didn't know where to look. Because the person who built the system was gone. The incident stretched from hours to nearly 2 days. Thousands of customers saw errors on the billing page. A partner company paused a promotional campaign because transactions were failing. By Monday, the company lost $180,000 in refunds and a chunk of user trust. The CEO was furious. Not at Liam. At the team. At the engineers who suddenly weren't performing. He asked why no one could do what Daniel did. The answer was simple. Because Daniel wasn't there. Sparkle's incident number 2, the investor demo disaster. Liam had scheduled a demo with 2 major investors, a session meant to showcase Halcyon's new direction under his leadership. He planned to display the upgraded platform, prove its scalability, and secure a commitment that would help accelerate the IPO roadmap. He rehearsed. He practiced his lines. He wore the expensive suit. But he forgot the one thing every engineer learns early. Never demo on production. The platform was still unstable from the outage. Traffic routing hadn't fully normalized. The analytics dashboards were still missing half the data. When Liam clicked on the live demo link, the screen froze. Then blanked. Then displayed a server error. Investors waited, smiling politely, while Liam's face drained 3 shades of color. He tried refreshing. Failed. He tried switching features. Failed. He called for tech support, not understanding that tech support couldn't fix a systemic architecture problem in 10 minutes while investors sipped their expensive coffee. The investors left with cordial handshakes and polite tones. But the next morning, their email came in. We are postponing any commitments until internal infrastructure reliability improves. The CEO slammed his office door so hard people on floor 7 turned their heads. That day, he held a leadership meeting. Witnesses later told me. He didn't yell at Liam, he defended him. He blamed the engineering team for not stepping up. He kept saying Daniel never prepared backups properly. Funny. Because backups were the only reason the system didn't die completely. Sparkle's incident number 3, the data migration that should have been delayed. 3 weeks after my departure, Halcyon pushed forward with a data migration I had architected but warned them not to execute until Q4. It was delicate. Risky. The kind of migration you do only when your team resembles a symphony, not a jazz improv group. But Liam wanted a milestone win. He insisted on moving forward. This time, I didn't hear secondhand. I was eating lunch when a former colleague, Sarah, called me directly. Daniel, she said breathlessly. The migration crashed. What part? Everything. The live environment is rejecting the new schema. It shouldn't reject, I said. Did you run the compatibility script? We tried, she said, voice cracking, but no one knows how you wrote it. We tried reverse engineering it, but... I closed my eyes. I had documented that script too. But only I understood its logic fully, because the system had been built in layers over 7 years, many of them patched during 2 a.m. emergencies where documentation came after survival. How bad is it? I asked. Bad, she whispered. We're looking at data loss in 3 regions. 3 regions. 3. That's not a glitch. That's a catastrophe. The incident took 4 days to stabilize. Customers filed complaints. Partners threatened legal action. The engineering team looked like they were living on caffeine fumes and despair. Finally, the CEO called an all-hands. One engineer told me later. Martin looked like he aged 10 years in a week. Someone asked, timidly. Should we bring Daniel back for consulting? Silence. Stillness. Then Martin snapped. No. We handle this internally. It wasn't about pride. It was about denial. If he brought me back, he would be admitting he'd made the wrong son the leader. Sparkle's incident number 4, the mass resignation. 2 senior engineers quit. Then 3 more. Then a mid-level project manager left with a scathing exit interview. You removed the one person who kept this building standing. Then put an intern with a famous father in charge of the roof. The company lost 14 employees in 6 weeks. Recruiters started circulating the story. Halcyon is sinking. Leadership is unstable. They pushed out their backbone. Engineers in the industry talk. And nothing spreads faster than a warning. Don't join Halcyon. Not until they fix their leadership mess. Sparkle's the call I knew would come. It was a Thursday evening. I was cooking pasta when my phone buzzed. Martin Hart, CEO. I stared at the screen. I didn't answer. He tried again. Then again. Finally, I picked up. His voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. Daniel, he said. We need to talk. I waited. There are complications. Complications. That word did a lot of work. We're experiencing instability across multiple systems, he continued. The team is struggling without central oversight. Translation. The company is collapsing and we need you to patch the holes. He hesitated. We'd like to discuss a contract. Temporary. Flexible. Compensation is negotiable. He expected gratitude. Or relief. Or eagerness. Instead, I said. I'll think about it. Silence. Then, "Thank you, Daniel." He sounded like a man grabbing at the last branch before the fall. I hung up. I did not call back. Not yet. Because the fall wasn't finished. Not even close. Collapse doesn't happen all at once. It waits for the wrong person to make one final decision. When Martin Hart called asking for temporary consulting, I told him I would think about it. I knew I wouldn't say yes. Not yet. Because the downfall wasn't complete. The people who needed to learn the lesson hadn't learned it. You don't rebuild a company by patching holes while the person who created the holes still holds the hammer. But Halcyon Systems didn't have time to wait for self-awareness. It was already drowning. And they didn't even know how deep the water was. Sparkles, the CEO's son, takes over. After the disastrous data migration, the board panicked. Investors panicked. Clients panicked. Someone had to take control. Martin made the worst possible decision. He officially put his son Liam in charge of stabilization strategy. Not engineering oversight. Not operations. Not crisis management. Strategy. The word that sounds sophisticated but means nothing when the house is on fire. Still, Liam strutted through the office with a bright smile and false confidence, the kind of swagger you only develop when you've never actually failed without a cushion beneath you. People followed him because the CEO told them to. Not because he knew what he was doing. Sparkles incident number 5, the performance push, that backfired. The first thing Liam did was to conduct what he called a performance audit. He gathered the engineering team, the same exhausted, sleep-deprived people who had been plugging leaks since I left, and said, "We need accountability. We can't keep operating in chaos." Chaos he helped create. He told them they needed to justify their work hours and demonstrate efficiency gains. One engineer, a quiet guy named Leo, said gently, "We're trying." But without Daniel's architecture context, some decisions. Liam cut him off. "Daniel's gone. It is what it is. We need to work with what we have." That phrase, "we need to work with what we have," landed like a slap. Because what they had was a system built on years of complex engineering decisions. Decisions I made, decisions I understood, decisions no one else fully knew. Within the week, 4 more engineers quit. Liam responded by hiring 2 contractors who cost triple their salaries and knew nothing about the infrastructure. It was like replacing a heart surgeon with 2 personal trainers because they look strong. Sparkles incident number 6, the security breach. 3 weeks later, Halcyon experienced a minor security alert, the kind that requires calm, coordinated response. But calm and coordination were not Liam's strengths. Instead of escalating to the security team, he called an emergency all-hands meeting and announced, "We may have been hacked. Everyone, shut down your systems immediately." Everyone. Hundreds of employees. In the middle of a business day. People froze. Shutting down mid-process could corrupt data, break transactions, and cause more damage than the breach itself. Security lead Priya tried to intervene. "Liam, please. This is not the correct pro." He cut her off. "Do as I say." The result? They corrupted thousands of active workflows and caused a 4-hour platform-wide outage. The breach turned out to be a false positive. The outage caused real loss. $600,000 in service credits. 2 large clients threatening to walk. And worst of all, the internal confidence shattered like glass. People started whispering openly. "We need Daniel. This company won't last without him." Why did they get rid of the one person who actually understood the system? Sparkles Martin calls again, but this time, he's not calm. I received the call at 6:12 a.m. "Daniel." Martin's voice was tense. "Please. We need you." I sipped my coffee. "Is this about the outage?" His breath shook. "You heard." "I hear many things." He swallowed. We'll double your former salary for consulting. No fixed hours. Just help us stabilize the architecture. No, I said gently. Silence. Daniel, please. Martin, this isn't a technical problem, I said. It's a leadership problem. He stayed quiet. You promoted someone who wasn't qualified, I continued. And now you're asking me to fix the consequences of your decision while leaving the cause untouched. That's not fair, he muttered. It's accurate. He inhaled sharply. You're letting the company crash to make a point. No, I said calmly. The company is crashing because of the choices you made. He didn't respond. Because the truth, spoken quietly, is heavier than any accusation. Sparkles, the board intervenes. 3 days later, I received an unexpected email. Subject, request for consultation discussion. From, Board Executive Liaison, Halcyon Systems. The board, not Martin, wanted a meeting. Why? Because investors were demanding answers. Because revenue projections dropped. Because rumor of a possible acquisition at a discount spread through the market. The board wasn't sentimental. They weren't angry. They were afraid. When a company bleeds money, fear is the only honest language left. I agreed to the meeting. Not to rescue them. But to hear who they would choose to be now that the illusion of control had collapsed. Sparkles, the meeting, and the moment truth set the room on fire. The boardroom smelled like expensive leather and panic. 7 members sat around a polished oak table. Martin sat at the end, face pale, jaw clenched. Liam was not present. The chairwoman began. Daniel, thank you for coming. We'll get straight to the point. The company is facing instability we can't ignore. I nodded. I'm aware. She folded her hands. We'd like your assessment. I studied the faces around the table. People used to prestige. Power. Control. People who thought systems ran themselves. I spoke carefully. You have 3 problems, I said. 1 technical, 1 operational, 1 structural. They leaned in. Technical, your systems rely on institutional knowledge that walked out the door with me because you didn't invest in redundancy. They nodded stiffly. Operational, the engineering team is demoralized. They don't trust leadership. They're leaving at a rate that guarantees further instability. Uneasy glances around the table. And structural. I paused. The person leading product strategy is not qualified. Silence. No one breathed. Finally, the chairwoman said. You're referring to Liam? Yes. Martin stiffened. You don't know what he's capable of. With respect, I said, I know exactly what he's capable of, because I've seen the results. 1 board member exhaled sharply. Another rubbed his forehead. A third whispered. I told you this would happen. The chairwoman asked. If we remove Liam from oversight, would you return to stabilize operations? It was the moment Martin's world cracked. He stared at me in disbelief. You're asking him to replace my son? No, the chairwoman said. We're asking him to repair the damage your son caused. Martin stood abruptly. This is outrageous. You're letting the engineers manipulate you. No, the chairwoman said calmly. We're letting the results speak. Martin was losing grip. On the company. On the illusion of control. On the belief that legacy outranks competence. He stormed out of the room. For a full minute, no one spoke. Then the chairwoman turned back to me. Daniel, will you help us? I didn't answer right away. Because the answer wasn't simple. They didn't just want my skills. They wanted the stability that came with my presence. They wanted to undo a decision born from ego, not logic. And they wanted me to save them from the consequences of their own blindness. After a long silence, I said, I'll consider it, under one condition. The room leaned forward. I continued. The CEO's son is removed from all strategic authority. Effective immediately. A ripple moved around the table. Shock. Relief. Fear. The chairwoman nodded once. We'll take it to vote. Some empires don't collapse from sabotage, they collapse from the weight of the truth they refuse to see. The boardroom door closed behind Martin with a heavy, echoing finality. Everyone remained silent for several seconds, as if acknowledging a shift in the company's gravity. The chairwoman straightened a stack of papers that didn't need straightening. Two board members exchanged glances that spoke volumes. It's time. Finally, she looked at me. Daniel, she said, you've given us clarity. We'll discuss your condition privately. But she didn't need to say the rest. I already knew. The company had reached the point where survival mattered more than loyalty to the CEO's ego. The meeting adjourned. I walked out. And waited. Sparkles the vote. The board voted that afternoon. It wasn't close. 5-2. A motion was filed to remove Liam from all strategic authority. A follow-up motion was filed to suspend Martin from day-to-day operations pending a governance review. It wasn't mutiny. It was triage. When a ship is sinking, the crew stops listening to the captain who steered into the iceberg. By evening, the news had reached every floor of Halcyon Systems. No one cried. No one shouted. They just went very, very quiet. Because sometimes the thing people feared to say out loud, we're being mismanaged, suddenly becomes undeniable truth. And truth has a sound. It's the sound of recognition. Sparkles the CEO's outburst. Martin called me the next morning. Not with panic. With anger. Did you do this? His voice trembled with fury. You asked for my assessment, I said calmly. The board voted based on results. You humiliated my son. No, I replied. Your son humiliated himself. I only named the damage. You think you can run this place without us? I don't want to run your place, I said gently. I want stability and competence. That's all. He laughed bitterly. You think they'll trust you now? After undermining leadership? I didn't undermine leadership, I said. Leadership undermined itself. Martin hung up. I didn't take it personally. When people watch something they built crack, they either examine the structure or blame the hammer. He chose the hammer. Sparkles the sun's fall. Later that afternoon, I was called back into the boardroom. This time, Liam was present. He looked different, smaller somehow, the sheen of confidence scraped away. He wouldn't look at me. The chairwoman addressed him. Liam, your strategic decisions contributed to systemic instability. We are removing you from all decision-making authority effective immediately. Liam swallowed. I tried my best, he murmured. No arrogance. Just fear. And for a moment, a brief, fleeting moment, I felt compassion for him. Because it wasn't his fault he'd been put into a position he wasn't qualified for. He was a symptom. Not the cause. But compassion didn't change consequences. He nodded shakily. I understand. The chairwoman turned to me. And now, Daniel. Your terms. Sparkles the new role, on your terms. I didn't ask for his job. I didn't want a throne. I wanted something far simpler. Stability. Autonomy. Respect. So I said. I'll return as Chief Systems Architect. I'll rebuild the engineering team from the ground up. I'll stabilize the infrastructure. They nodded. But, I continued, I report directly to the board. Not to Martin. Not to Liam. Not to anyone who doesn't understand what this company actually runs on. Silence. Then the chairwoman nodded once. Approved. A wave of relief moved through the room like an exhale the company had been holding for too long. Liam looked down at his hands. He didn't argue. Martin wasn't present. He had lost the vote. Sparkles rebuilding the company. Returning to the office felt surreal. People didn't greet me with applause or celebration. They greeted me with something far more meaningful. Relief. The engineering floor lifted its head like a tired army finally seeing reinforcements. Thank God. We can fix this now. Please tell us you're staying. I didn't promise miracles. I promised structure. We spent the first 2 weeks mapping all system dependencies, rewriting broken APIs, stabilizing the data schema, reassigning responsibilities to people who actually understood the tools, re-establishing the incident playbook, documenting every critical process with painful detail. And the outages stopped. Dead. Silence, for the first time in months, was not ominous. It was productive. Investors noticed. Clients noticed. The board noticed. And slowly, the company began to breathe again. Sparkles, the CEO's final act. 3 weeks into the stabilization phase, Martin requested a meeting. A private one. I agreed. He came into the small conference room looking exhausted. Not angry. Not proud. Human. Daniel, he said quietly, I want to apologize. Those words were heavier than anything technical I'd ever solved. I put my son in a role he wasn't ready for, he continued. And I let ego blind me to the consequences. I should have trusted the people who built this company, not the image I wanted it to project. I nodded. I appreciate you saying that. He looked up at me, eyes worn. Do you hate me? No, I said. I don't hate you. I just couldn't protect the company while pretending everything was fine. He nodded slowly. You saved what I nearly destroyed. And for the first time since this began, I saw the man behind the title. A flawed leader. A proud father. A human being learning humility late, but learning it nonetheless. We shook hands. A clean ending. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just honest. Sparkles, the real revenge. People always expect corporate revenge to look like public humiliation. A fired CEO. A crying heir. A triumphant return with applause. But real revenge, the quiet kind, looks different. Real revenge is returning on your terms. Defining your own role. Refusing to be anyone's backup plan. Being valued because of competence, not politics. Rebuilding something others broke. Being trusted because the truth is undeniable. The company didn't fall into ruins. It fell apart enough to reveal what mattered. And then I rebuilt it. Not for Martin. Not for the board. For the people who worked late nights, wrote impossible code, and believed in a vision bigger than anyone's ego. And for myself. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not leaving someone else in ashes. It's standing in the ashes. And building something better than they ever imagined.